5 true high school lockdown horror stories. It was during my junior year of high school when something crazy happened. Something that still gives me chills when I think about it. I was 17 at the time, a female student going about my usual routine. I was no stranger to the long school days, filled with the typical classes, the social dynamics, and the occasional drama. But one particular day during fourth hour, things would take a drastic turn. The school day had started like any other. I had just finished my previous class and was waiting for the bell to ring, signaling the end of fourth hour. But as I sat in my seat, the familiar hum of the classroom was suddenly interrupted by the sharp sound of the intercom coming to life. It was the principal's voice, but there was something about it that didn't sit right. The tone was urgent, the words were clipped, and there was an underlying sense of worry that caught my attention. Attention, students and staff. This is not a drill. We are going into lockdown. Please lock all doors, turn off the lights, and remain silent until further notice. My heart skipped a beat. Lockdown? This wasn't a routine drill, this was something different. I looked around at my classmates, some of whom seemed confused, others visibly anxious. Our teacher quickly followed the instructions. She locked the door, turned off the lights, and motioned for us to remain silent. There was no time for questions, no time for explanations. The only thing we knew for sure was that something was happening, something serious. For what felt like hours, we sat in complete silence. The only sounds were the soft breathing of my classmates and the distant echoes of footsteps in the hallways. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my stomach. We didn't know why the lockdown was happening, but the air felt thick with tension. I kept trying to look out the window to see if anything was happening outside, but the blinds were drawn. There was no way of knowing what was going on. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the announcement came again over the intercom. The lockdown is over. Please remain calm. You will have the normal passing time. The last class of the day will be shorter than usual. The news of the lockdown lifting brought a sense of relief, but it was short-lived. We were all still left in the dark about what had actually happened. As the bell rang, signaling the end of fourth hour, students spilled into the hallways, buzzing with questions. The air was electric, full of nervous energy. I made my way to my locker to drop off my books and get the ones for my next class. But before I could get there, something unexpected happened. The vice principal appeared in front of me. "Can you come with me for a moment?" he asked. My heart raced. The tone in his voice was serious, but he assured me that I wasn't in trouble. I nodded, a little confused, and followed him down the hallway. He led me into the principal's office, where both he and the principal sat me down. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The principal took a deep breath before speaking. "There's been an incident. The school went into lockdown because a suspicious man was seen inside the building during class. He was spotted near the lockers, but when he was questioned, he fled. By the time the police arrived, he had already managed to escape the campus." My stomach sank. This was not the kind of news I was expecting. "Not only did he manage to slip past security," the vice principal continued, "but he also had a bolt cutter with him. He used it to break open your locker." I froze. My locker? I could barely comprehend what I was hearing. The man had used a bolt cutter on my locker? What did he want? Why my locker? I had never been involved in anything like this. I couldn't think of anyone who would have a reason to do something so strange, so invasive. "Do you recognize this man?" the principal asked, showing me a description of the suspect. I shook my head. I didn't know anyone who fit the description. The man's face was a mystery to me. They asked if I could think of anyone who might have had a reason to target me, but I had no answers. After a quick inspection of my locker, it was clear that nothing had been stolen. There were no valuables inside, just books and a few personal items. But the fact that this man had broken into it, using a bolt cutter, left me feeling violated, unsettled. It was almost as if I had been personally targeted, even though I couldn't understand why. The day continued on, but everything felt different. My parents were called to the school, and I went home afterward, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Everyone seemed to be on edge, trying to figure out why this man would have done such a thing. But as the night went on, things would take a much darker turn. That evening, after dinner, I was in my bedroom, just scrolling through my phone and trying to forget about the strange events of the day. My room was at the back of the house, with a window that overlooked the backyard. I remember glancing out the window, half-heartedly, when something caught my attention. At first, I thought it was just the wind or a stray animal. But when I looked closer, I could see a figure in the yard. A man was walking through our backyard. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My heart started to race, my breath catching in my throat. It was the same feeling I had earlier that day in the lockdown. This wasn't normal. There was no reason for anyone to be walking around our yard at this hour. I moved away from the window, hoping that he hadn't seen me. I quickly ducked down, trying to stay out of sight, but my mind was racing. What was going on? Why was he out there? I crept toward the other side of the room, hoping for a better view. And that's when I saw him again, right outside my window. He was standing there, staring into my room. My heart stopped. I bolted out of my bedroom and ran to my parents. My dad quickly moved to the window, looking outside, but the man had already started to move further into the yard. My mom grabbed the phone and dialed 911. The police were on their way. We kept our eyes on the man, watching as he paced back and forth in the yard. He didn't seem to be in a hurry, he was just wandering, almost as if he was waiting for something. I was terrified. It felt like the same man from earlier, the one who had broken into my locker. Within minutes, the police arrived. My dad didn't take his eyes off the man, even as the officers approached the backyard. The man didn't run at first, but when he saw the flashing lights, he bolted. The officers chased him, and by the time he reached the edge of our property, they had already caught up with him. I couldn't believe it. It was the same man, the one who had broken into my locker at school earlier that day. How had he found me? Why was he following me? The police questioned him, but I never learned the full story. All I knew was that he had been stalking me, and if the police hadn't arrived when they did, who knows what might have happened. I felt so violated, so unsafe. I couldn't shake the feeling that this man had been watching me for days, even longer than that. I didn't know how long he had been following me or what he had planned. After the police had taken him away, I went to bed that night, still trying to make sense of everything. I couldn't escape the feeling that something was wrong. It was one of the scariest nights of my life. The following days were filled with questions, and I had to tell the story over and over again. My school was never the same after that. I never looked at my locker in the same way, never walked through the hallways without glancing over my shoulder. The whole experience left a mark on me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. In the end, the man was arrested, but I never found out why he had chosen me, why he had targeted my locker, or why he had been so determined to find me again that night. All I knew was that I was lucky to have escaped unharmed. That was the only lockdown I had ever experienced in high school, but it was the one that would stick with me forever. It was a crisp autumn day, just like any other day in high school. The bell rang, signaling the start of third period. I was sitting in class, listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights above. Everything seemed normal, too normal. My classmates were busy with their tasks, while I daydreamed a bit. The mundane routine of high school life had made me numb to the usual chaos of the hallways and classrooms. We were in the middle of a math assignment when suddenly, I felt something shift in the air. It wasn't anything obvious, just a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Then, without warning, the school's intercom crackled to life. I heard the principal's voice, but it was sharp and urgent, unlike anything I had ever heard before. Attention, all students and staff. We are initiating a lockdown. Please follow all lockdown procedures immediately. My heart skipped a beat. I looked around the room, trying to gauge my classmates' reactions, but everyone seemed as confused and unnerved as I felt. The teacher quickly stood up, her calm demeanor cracking just slightly as she rushed to lock the classroom door. The usual procedures were clear. Turn off the lights, hide in a corner, and stay quiet. I didn't know what the lockdown was for, and that thought gnawed at me. This wasn't a drill. It was real. Something was wrong. My mind raced through possibilities. Was there an intruder in the building? Did someone have a weapon? Why were we being locked down? My hands shook as I tried to ignore the thoughts racing in my head. I stayed in my seat, as still and silent as I could, listening intently for any sounds outside the classroom. As time passed, the anxiety in the room built. It was clear that no one knew why this was happening. The air felt heavier, like something was building up outside the walls of the classroom. I had to know what was going on. I needed to get back to my classroom, as I was far from it. The panic I felt earlier began to mount again, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on my chest. The idea of just sitting there made my skin crawl. I had to move. I had to get out of this limbo. So I waited for the right moment, and then, as calmly as I could, I stood up, silently opening the door and stepping into the hallway. At first, the hallways were eerily quiet, empty, cold. The doors were all locked. A feeling of dread settled over me. I wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't a place for students during a lockdown. Everyone was supposed to be inside their classrooms, staying safe. But as I walked further down the hall, I realized I wasn't going to make it back to my classroom in time by sticking to the normal routes. I needed a faster way. That's when I remembered the gym. The gym was on the other side of the school, and I knew that the door on the far end of the gym would lead me right back to the hallway outside my classroom. It was a shortcut. I had taken it before when classes were in session, and it usually saved a lot of time. But the gym could be in use. There might be a class or practice going on, and I wasn't sure if I was allowed to just walk through it. I didn't want to disrupt anyone if they were busy, especially during a time like this. But I had no choice. I needed to get back. I cautiously approached the gym door. To my surprise, it wasn't locked. I hesitated for a second, but then pushed the door open, stepping inside. The gym was silent, empty, and strangely cold. It was vast and quiet. I walked quickly toward the far door, which led to the hallway. I was almost there when I suddenly froze. Out of nowhere, a man appeared in front of me. I had no idea who he was. He didn't belong here. He had long hair, looked to be in his 30s, and was dressed in a long jacket. He didn't look like a teacher or anyone I knew from the school. In fact, he seemed completely out of place. He just stood there in the middle of the gym, blocking my way. I stopped immediately, unsure what to do. My heart began racing. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I stood frozen, my eyes locked on him. His expression was unreadable, but there was something unsettling about the way he stood there, almost as if he was waiting for something. Then, to my horror, he started walking toward me. I quickly turned on my heels and began walking away, my pace quickening into a near jog. I could hear his footsteps behind me, growing closer with each passing second. My heart was pounding now, and my breath felt shallow. I didn't look back, but I knew he was following me. I wasn't going to outrun him, so I needed to think fast. I scanned the area for a place to hide, and my eyes landed on a janitor's closet near the end of the hallway. Without hesitation, I ran toward it, pushed open the door, and stepped inside. The darkness was overwhelming. The only sound was my heartbeat in my ears as I quickly closed the door behind me. The room was small, cluttered with cleaning supplies, and smelled faintly of bleach. I didn't care. I was just desperate to be hidden. I backed into the farthest corner and pressed myself against the cold, hard wall. My body was shaking, and my mind raced. I strained to hear anything from outside the closet, but all I could hear was my own breath and the distant sounds of the lockdown over the school's intercom. There were no footsteps, no sounds of movement, nothing. It was as if the world outside had stopped. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. My mind played tricks on me. I could almost hear him out there. Maybe he was right outside, waiting for me to make a sound. I tried to stay as still as possible. My muscles ached from being crouched down for so long, but I didn't dare move. After what seemed like an eternity, I finally heard something, the faintest sound from the intercom. The lockdown was over. I slowly exhaled, my body relaxing for the first time in what felt like forever. I cautiously opened the door, peeking out into the hallway. It was empty. I quickly made my way back to my classroom, heart still racing. I told my teacher what had happened, and she seemed equally shaken, but no one seemed to know anything about the man I had seen. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was he? Why was he in the school? And what would have happened if I hadn't hidden? The next day, I learned more about the man who had caused the lockdown. Turns out, he was the reason for it in the first place. He had been the cause of the strange, unsettling situation that had set everything into motion. He didn't belong there. He wasn't a teacher or staff member. He was an intruder, a stranger. But no one ever said why he had been at the school or what his intentions were. No one explained if he was caught or why he had been in the building that day. All I knew was that he had followed me that entire time. And somehow, I had narrowly avoided something far worse. Looking back on it now, it's still unclear what would have happened if I hadn't acted quickly. What if I had kept walking through the gym, not thinking twice about the man I saw? What if I hadn't hidden? I guess I'll never know. But I do know that whatever happened that day, it was the closest I've ever come to a real-life nightmare. And I'm just thankful I wasn't the one who ended up being his target. And there you have it, a terrifying experience that I'll never forget. What would you have done in my shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want more creepy tales like this, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on the bell icon so you never miss out on another chilling experience. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, always be cautious, because you never know who's lurking just around the corner. See you in the next one.